In a quiet suburban town, nestled among tree-lined streets and smiling neighborhoods, stood Crestmont High School, a place known for academic pride, pep rallies, and polished reputations. But beneath its polished exterior, something sinister festered behind the lockers and linoleum floors. One October morning, a janitor opened a supply closet and made a discovery that would shake the school to its core: the lifeless body of a student, hidden like a dirty secret. But instead of a transparent investigation, what followed was silence, lies, and a disturbing cover-up that protected power over truth. This is the story of Elijah Moore, a quiet teen with a promising future, whose tragic end was buried beneath a web of corruption, fear, and institutional betrayal. Welcome to True Crime Hub, and this is Whispers in the Hallway, the high school that covered up murder. Elijah Moore wasn't the kind of kid you expected to be the center of a true crime story. He was quiet, brilliant, and painfully shy. His favorite spot was the school library, where he buried himself in books on psychology and space. A senior at Crestmont High, Elijah was weeks away from early admission into Stanford. To his teachers, he was a model student. To his classmates, he was the soft-spoken boy who always wore headphones and rarely spoke unless spoken to. But even Elijah had secrets. He was being bullied. Brutally. His mother, Tamara Moore, had reported it several times to the school counselor. The bruises on Elijah's arms, the frequent absences, and the growing signs of anxiety, none of it seemed enough to prompt action. The school, deeply concerned with maintaining its stellar reputation, insisted there was no evidence of persistent bullying. But Tamara knew something was wrong. And Elijah? He started withdrawing more. One night, he left a note on her kitchen table. "If something happens to me, ask Mr. Rowan. He knows everything." The next morning, Elijah didn't come home. That was October 12th. The school said he never showed up. But that wasn't true. The night of October 11th was quiet in Crestmont. Most homes were winding down from another school day. But inside the sprawling, red-brick campus of Crestmont High, a group of students had stayed behind for what was known as the Senior Lock-In, an unofficial overnight hangout in the gymnasium, organized every year by CNAs with the wink-wink approval of certain staff. Elijah Moore had been invited for the first time. He almost didn't go. His mother said he was hesitant, said something felt off. But she encouraged him to enjoy his senior year. "You've worked so hard," she told him. So, Elijah packed his backpack and left around 7:15 p.m. That would be the last time Tamara saw her son alive. The event was supposed to run from 7 p.m. to midnight. About 30 students attended. Pizza, music, dumb dares, phones out, typical teen chaos. Except something was very wrong that night. According to initial statements, Elijah was only seen briefly around 8 p.m. A classmate, Kenzie Rowe, later said Elijah had looked nervous, like he didn't want to be there. She remembered seeing him walking toward the east wing of the school, alone. That wing was supposed to be locked. So how did Elijah get in? And more importantly, why? At 5:43 a.m. the next morning, Tony Delgado, the school's longtime janitor, began his shift. When he reached the East Wing science corridor, he noticed a strange smell. He traced it to a supply closet between two unused classrooms. Inside, buried beneath a pile of janitorial rags and cardboard boxes, was Elijah's body. He wasn't just dead. He had been beaten. His jaw was broken. Several ribs fractured. His fingers showed signs of defensive wounds. Worst of all, the autopsy would later reveal blunt force trauma to the back of his skull, delivered by an object never recovered. There was no blood trail in the hallway. No security footage of the attack. No sign that a fight had occurred in any nearby classroom. And yet, the school waited 5 hours to call the police. Let that sink in. 5 hours. The official statement from Crestmont High claimed there was a delay in verifying identity and emergency protocol miscommunication. But privately, emails later uncovered suggested the administration had immediately recognized Elijah and had debated how best to manage the optics. A dead student, found on school grounds after a supervised senior event? For Principal Darrell Rowan and Vice Principal Melinda Beck, the answer was simple: control the narrative. The first lie. When police finally arrived at 11:12 a.m., the story was already shaped. They were told Elijah must have entered the East Wing alone, fallen, and hit his head. A tragic accident. But investigators noticed things that didn't add up. There was no damage to the shelving or floor where Elijah was found. His injuries were consistent with multiple strikes, not a single fall. There were traces of blood on the janitor's mop bucket, an attempt to clean, and most damning, Elijah's phone was missing. Police asked for security footage. The school claimed the hallway cameras were undergoing maintenance. 3 weeks later, it was revealed that the footage had been manually deleted by a school administrator. But which one? The same Mr. Rowan Elijah had named in his note. Darrell Rowan had been principal of Crestmont for 11 years. Known as charming, community-minded, and media-savvy, he'd helped the school win multiple national awards. But staff quietly whispered that he could be controlling. Reports emerged that he often discouraged teachers from documenting behavioral problems of top-performing students. There was a pattern of minimizing conflict, shielding athletes and honor students, and protecting the school's pristine image at all costs. When asked about Elijah's note, Mr. Rowan claimed he had no idea why a student would implicate him. He didn't even know Elijah that well, he said. But that, too, was a lie, because Elijah had been reporting bullying directly to him for months. The name that came up over and over again in private interviews with students: Jared Miles, captain of the varsity football team, son of the school board president, a golden boy with a temper. Multiple students said Jared had tormented Elijah throughout the year, slamming his books, tripping him in the cafeteria, calling him slurs. Kenzie Rowe later admitted she'd seen Jared grab Elijah by the hoodie just 2 weeks before the incident, slamming him against a locker. But none of these incidents were ever reported. Not officially. Why? Because Jared's father, Martin Miles, wielded power like a weapon. Teachers who dared to write Jared up found themselves facing professional evaluations. Whispers began to circulate. If you cross the Miles family, your job's on the line. So when Elijah was found dead, Jared wasn't even interviewed. Not at first. And when he finally was, it was behind closed doors, with no recording, no transcript, and no charges filed. Tamara Moore begged for answers. The school shut its doors. The district stopped returning her calls. And the community, they just moved on. But someone else didn't. Because weeks after the incident, an anonymous letter appeared in Tamara's mailbox. 4 words, scribbled in shaky handwriting. He wasn't alone. Ask Kenzie. Tamara Moore had received the anonymous note 3 weeks after her son Elijah was buried. He wasn't alone. Ask Kenzie. It was handwritten, unsigned, slipped into a plain white envelope. The school claimed no knowledge. The police treated it as unverified. But Tamara knew. Kenzie Rowe, Elijah's classmate. The girl who'd seen him that night. The girl who said nothing. At first, Kenzie refused to speak. But guilt is louder in silence. Eventually, she agreed to meet Tamara. What she revealed would break the illusion Crestmont had worked so hard to protect. What Kenzie saw. Kenzie admitted that she'd followed Elijah that night out of curiosity. She saw him being pulled aside by Jared Miles and 2 of his teammates, Trent Howard and Leo Donnell. They weren't laughing. They were surrounding him. The confrontation escalated quickly. Jared accused Elijah of ratting him out to the school board about cheating. Elijah said he didn't know what Jared was talking about. Kenzie heard a shove. A loud thud. Elijah hit the floor hard. Jared kicked him. Once. Then again. Leo hesitated, but didn't stop him. Trent pulled out his phone, laughing. Kenzie turned away. She couldn't watch anymore. She didn't know they'd follow Elijah into the East Wing. She didn't know Jared had keys. His father had access to everything. She didn't know they'd leave him there. Bleeding. Alone. Dying. She told no one. Not the next day. Not at the funeral. Not when the school claimed it was an accident. Because she was scared. The same way Elijah had been. Tamara immediately brought Kenzie's statement to the police. But what followed was not justice. It was obstruction. The school district's attorney quickly discredited Kenzie, citing her history of anxiety and medication. The Miles family called it a false narrative spread by a grieving mother. The janitor who found Elijah? Silenced. His contract terminated. He moved to another town. Elijah's phone? Never recovered. And the school board? They quietly renewed Principal Rowan's contract. No charges. No hearings. Just silence. It was as if the school had sealed Elijah's death behind those walls, like it never happened. But Tamara wouldn't let it be forgotten. In the spring of the following year, Tamara painted a mural across her garage door. A portrait of Elijah in his graduation cap, surrounded by stars and books. Below it, 3 words. It caught local media attention. Then national. Students began speaking out. More stories of bullying ignored, of complaints buried, of teachers silenced. And though no criminal charges ever stuck, the weight of public pressure eventually cracked Crestmont's polished mask. Mr. Rowan resigned, citing health reasons. Vice Principal Beck left to explore new opportunities. Jared Miles, he quietly transferred to a private university out of state. To this day, he has never spoken publicly about Elijah Moore. But the whispers haven't stopped. In the hallways, in the teacher lounges, in the cafeteria where Elijah used to sit alone. What really happened that night? Crestmont High still stands. The lockers still clang open. The bells still ring. But the walls remember. Elijah Moore was not just a student. He was a son, a dreamer, a quiet boy who loved stars and wanted to heal minds. And he became a symbol of something much darker, a reminder of what happens when power protects power and truth is treated as a liability. No court ever convicted his killers. No plaque honors his name in the school he once walked. But a mother's love and a small community of voices refused to let his story die in silence. At the end of it all, Elijah left us with one sentence. If something happens to me, ask Mr. Rowan. He was right. And we did. If this story moved you, please consider sharing it, because silence protects corruption, and attention demands accountability. If you have a story like Elijah's, know that your voice matters. Subscribe to True Crime Hub for more haunting cases that demand answers, and the voices that refuse to be buried. And remember, the most dangerous secrets are the ones kept in hallways.